This overview contains spoilers on Borderlands 2, Tales from the Borderlands, and some of the book Dead or Alive itself, including the ending of the games and the lore/characters. Borderlands, Dead or Alive, Book Overview, The Misadventures of Sasha, Fiona, and Gaige, Chapter 1, Intro to Borderlands, Dead or Alive, and brief overview of Anthony Burch. What happens to a person when they come up from nothing and all of a sudden fall into a massive amount of wealth? Big mansions, an endless supply of servants, no worries about food, water, or survival, and a ticket into the closed-off community of elites. When they went from living, sleeping, and breathing the life of crime as a thief, never far from danger or a pile of feces for that matter, to a life of luxury. Turns out having $10 billion in their bank account can be pretty damn boring and dehumanizing when everyone else around them is fighting just to stay alive. The same circumstances they were just under not even a day ago. They fought their whole lives to go against the system as sisters in crime, to put up the middle finger against the greedy capitalists and CEOs, but now they are no better than those inhumane human beings who grind others beneath the heel of their feet. After realizing this after many mistakes, it's time to fight back and leave the luxury of wealth. Aided by a certain anarchist necromancer vault hunter, the sisters plan a revolution that will change the world of Eden 5 forever. Borderlands Dead or Alive is a 309-page book that takes place after Borderlands 2 and immediately after Tales from the Borderlands. It was released in June of 2024 by Titan Books and written by Anthony Burch. The book goes over the adventures of Sasha, Fiona, and Gaige, along with other newer characters taking supporting roles that help the trio in their journey on Eden 5. Anthony Burch is well known to fans of the Borderlands franchise, having rented Borderlands 2, Tales from the Borderlands, Borderlands the pre-sequel, and many other games. He also DMs and runs a podcast called Dungeons and Daddies. An interesting tidbit that not many know, despite being obvious, is that Ashley Burch, the iconic voice actor for Tiny Tina, is the sister of Anthony. Chapter 2, Prologue. The story starts with a brief prologue focused on how young Sasha and Fiona came across Felix, their father figure. Sasha sits on a rooftop, while Fiona tries to pickpocket an old mustachioed man in front of a water cellar. He catches her and grabs her arm, trying to lift his wallet, and proceeds to question her on her life, where her family is, etc. Fiona gestures over to Sasha, who has a line of sight on the man, who goes from mild amusement to genuine interest. He brings Fiona closer to him and uses her body to body block the sniper's shot. He asks her why she chose him to pickpocket, and she responds that he looked more well off than the others. He prods further and asks for the real reason. He then says that they chose to rob him because of the way he walks, his prosthetic eye, and how he would have a hard time chasing her down. He informs her that perhaps he wanted them to rob him, and that the way he chose to do these things was on purpose. He tells Fiona to signal her sister down so they can talk, and they walk to a different location altogether. He tells them that they should have paid more attention to his shield, and that they should have watched his hand, which didn't have a gun in it. He pulls out a cryotube that costs thousands of dollars when sold to the right vendor. He then tells them he'll cut them 1% of the profits before Fiona yells out 10%, and he lowers it to 2%. Fiona then argues that they should be partners for the next job, and that the split should be 50-50 now that they are partners. They talk some more, and he agrees to take them under his wing and reveals himself to be Felix. Chapter 3. Everybody Gets One. After the prologue, the story starts in Sasha's point of view during the ending of Tales from the Borderlands, right before the detonator explodes, as the caravan they are in boosts towards the exit of the vault monster. Sasha triggers the explosives, but nothing happens. She keeps pressing, hoping she didn't trigger it hard enough, before she realizes the explosives aren't going to detonate. They can't stop the caravan, otherwise they would be dead in an instant. Sasha comes up with a plan. A bad plan. She jumps from the caravan, rolling towards the explosives, hammering on the detonator, hoping to be in range of the explosives. Minutes later, the battle against the vault monster is done, and Sasha lies on the ground dying while everyone crowds around her. She asks for the gift Felix left behind earlier, a pocket watch with the inscription, "Time heals all." Fiona opens the watch and a bright green glow envelops Sasha, lifting her body upward. The crystal heals all her wounds and sets her back on the ground. Everyone cheers and celebrates, and the next chapter starts in the eyes of Fiona standing in the vault with Rhys. Both Fiona and Rhys stood before the chest, deciding who's going to open the chest. They open the chest together, and she gets transferred to another dimension. She looks over to see Rhys, wishing for the rights of the Atlas Corporation before he disappears and she's alone. An ethereal voice greets Fiona in the form of a claptrap, and she asks it to revert to a disembodied voice. She questions the origin of the voice, and it informs her that it's a seraphim. She questions more before the voice urges her to wish for something. She's confused and doesn't know what to do before accidentally wishing for Sasha to be there. Sasha pops up and is confused before understanding very quickly. Fiona protests against the voice because that wasn't her actual wish before the voice tells her that it was joking. The voice once again tells them to wish for something, and Sasha and Fiona debate what to wish for. They think over wishing for guns, infinite amounts of cash, a bank transfer, etc., before deciding on something they can sell. Sasha has an idea, and Fiona allows her to wish for something. She wishes for a mint condition, first edition, Typhon de Leon, Vaultlander figurine. A boxed version of the figure drops into their hands before the voice tells them not to come back and spits the two sisters back into the Badlands with everyone else. Rhys, Fawn, and the others talk in the background, while Fiona questions Sasha on why she wished for the Vaultlander figurine. She tells Sasha that it's a multimedia lineup and that Rhys told her about it. Sasha continues and says that they can sell it to a collector for a big payday, and that selling the Vaultlander figurine will be their last big job ever. Chapter 4. Bright Lights, City Sights. The next part of our story starts with the sisters arriving at Eden 5 aboard the shuttle. They breathe in the air and look at the off-world workers and city before Fiona apologizes for letting Sasha die, telling her it's the big sister's job to look for the little sister. While they bicker back and forth, someone shoves a gun in their face and forces them to hand over the Vaultlander. He backs up to the door, waiting for the shuttle to land, and leaves, disappearing amongst the crowd. Fiona readies her wrist-mounted single-shot pistol, and both of them chase after the man. Shoving past the crowds, the sisters spot the man, and he returns fire with an elemental gun. Eventually, he gets to a checkpoint gate, guarded by sec bots, and pulls out a work permit to show the robot. In this small time frame, Fiona aims and shoots the man's ankle. They then ran towards him before being stopped by a sec bot as the man crawled his way towards the metal detector. Fiona and Sasha argue that the man has stolen property as he passes through the metal detector, and it lets out a loud beep. The sec bots confiscate the Vaultlander figurine, saying that it wasn't declared at customs. The man argues with the bots, saying that it was for his kid. They argue back and forth before the sec bot decapitates him. Two children awaited the man past the gate and started crying at the loss of their father. The bot gives back the figure to the sisters and lets them pass through. The book cuts to them in a taxi being driven to Villa Holloway in the Elite District. They pass by the poor section of the city called Rustville as the driver insists on them getting fancier and cleaner clothing. Sasha then explains to Fiona that the person they are meeting is a person by the name of Countess Holloway, who responded to their post about selling the figure. They argue about taking it out of the box and the resale value until they get to the Elite District. Secbots roam the neighborhood as the elites drive around and lounge in their cars. The chauffeur informs them that Holloway owns and controls the robots before Sasha explains that she has a self-defense plan. She's planted a micro-nade on the bottom of the Vaultlander box as a precaution. As they are driven up to the Holloway villa, Fiona changes her mind and they make a detour to dapper Delilah's to buy new clothing to impress the Countess. Chapter 5. Out of the Skag den, into the fire barrel. Sasha and Fiona arrive at Dapper Delilah's, pay the chauffeur, and enter the building. They are greeted by a sales assistant named Tabitha, who judges them for being off-worlders and helps them pick out clothing. The duo tries on clothing before Tabitha asks how they will be paying. Tamitha tells them that paying in cash is impossible as the price is too high before Fiona looks at the price tag and all the color drains from her face. She shows Sasha, and they both scream in horror as Tamitha escorts them out. She then changes her mind and calls a sec bot to apprehend them. Fiona argues with the sec bot, and the robot fines them $10,000 and demands immediate payment. Fiona gives him the middle finger, and the bot proceeds to forcefully clamp a debt cuff to both her right hand and right ankle, weighing heavily on her body. Fiona tries to argue further before thanking the bot and telling it they'll pay the fines as soon as possible. The bot deems it a crime to tell it what it wants to hear and cuffs Sasha's neck. The bot finally leaves as the sisters call for a chauffeur to take them to the Holloway villa. The book then cuts to the sisters inside the villa as the butler escorts them to a waiting room. After a little bit, the Countess herself comes out, greets them, and leads them to her office. She shows the duo around the place, pointing out various paintings, knickknacks, and other rooms until they reach her office. Having arrived, she gestures for them to sit down. They refuse, and she asks for the box. Fiona hands over the blood-covered box, and the Countess is insulted and insinuates that they stole the figure. Holloway tries to downplay the rarity of the figure before she scans it for authenticity. The scanner confirms it as authentic, and the Countess inquires as to what the sisters would throw out as an asking price. Fiona tells her to throw out a price first, and she throws out the enormous figure of $10 billion. After some excited deliberation with Sasha, they accept the offer before the room explodes. The book then switches to Gaige's POV as she navigates her way past Rustville on her way to the Elite District, followed by Deathtrap. She starts up her EchoCast and talks to her subscribers on the way there. She talks about an accident 5 years ago in which she killed a rich kid and her mother has been chasing her ever since. Eventually, she arrives and climbs over a spiked wall and up an echo tower, crossing a desert and over a border wall that separates the Elite District from the rest of Eden 5. Her subscribers ask her that it's a big step down from hunting vaults and killing Handsome Jack to hunting someone. She reveals that a certain someone murdered her father, and nothing is more important than killing that person. She arrives at the Holloway villa and fights through the secbots before blasting through a wall where Holloway is. Chapter 6. Book Presentation. The book's appearance is nothing really to take note of. It seems like they couldn't bother to get a piece of original artwork commissioned or made by an artist for the front cover. They took a big image of Fiona from what I think looks like a higher resolution image from Tales and slapped her in front with Gaige on the left and Sasha on the right with a big vault symbol behind them. They put the iconic Borderlands font on the top and bottom with a big written by Anthony Burch as a tagline to draw in those who may be familiar with the games but not the creatives behind the games. The spine has the title with a vault symbol. Turning to the back is just a simple description of the events leading up to Gaige crashing Sasha and Fiona's deal with Countess Holloway. I thought it was quite disappointing that they couldn't get an original piece of artwork for the front. The only thing that makes this book stand out on a shelf is most likely the iconic Borderlands font and the bright orange outer cover. On to how the book is presented in terms of writing, it's similar to how the Tales games did it. The chapter starts with a number and then the name of a character, which denotes whose point of view we are following from. Chapters aren't too long, clocking in around 5 or so pages, as the book switches between Fiona, Sasha, Gaige, and a couple of others' perspective. The frequently changing point of view lets the book feel fresh and keeps the reader engaged as they read, keeping the interest and element of surprise high. A few or more times when a confrontation happens between Fiona and another character, the book will turn into a choose-your-own-adventure style book, similar to the timed dialogue options in the Tales games. The book will start with a scene laying out the basic outline, then branching out into more options based on which path you choose. One example is getting past the secretary at the debtor's prison. The book lays out that you have to get past her, and Fiona lays out several options like bribing, intimidation, etc. in her head. You pick one, and the book will tell you to flip to a certain page to see the outcome. They all lead to the same outcome, but reading through all the options is fun and a nice break from the rest of the book. Chapter 7. Character Design. Character design is a hit or miss subject in this book, and amongst fans of the franchise, both in the main media and spin-offs. Let's focus on Fiona for now. Fiona, I feel, didn't get major character development from what I've ascertained from the plot. Both she and Sasha get the Vault Lander from a wish, sell it, live the high life, get bored, and go back to vault hunting and helping Gaige. She and Sasha do gain some character development, going from a petty criminal to somewhat of an anti-hero figure to the laborers of Eden 5, but that's about it. Despite a lot of things happening all at once in quick succession in the book, it seems like they both didn't really move much from the beginning of the book to the end. We learn her last name is Dylan, and we learn more of her and Sasha's relationship with Felix, but that's all I can remember. She's the main protagonist of the first Tales games and the book, and she propels the plot forward, developing as the plot needs her to. Her characterization isn't that different from the games either. Sasha, on the other hand, despite being the little sister, is little more than a plot device to drive the story forward, same as the game. We do delve into her psychology a little more with the book going into detail of her first death and how she felt being revived by the Green Stone. She and Fiona understand each other through the hardships and come to an understanding about each other. Fiona about her big sister role, and Sasha with her trauma of dying and being the little sister. They both also grapple heavily with the title of Vault Hunter and being a Pandoran outlander amongst the rich society of elites and laborers alike. Both the sisters struggle with their sudden wealth and how they live compared to the laborers, and how much of a meaningless life endless wealth can bring despite being safe. Borderlands as a franchise has always been about the dangers of capitalism and how it can lead to the downfall of society, and the book represents that viewpoint in spades. Sasha also has some straight plot armor things later in the story, such as learning how to hack electronics, hand-waving it off as having Reese taught her, despite Dead or Alive happening immediately after Tales with little downtime. Sasha's relationship with Reese is also expanded upon a little and made clear between the both of them near the end of the book. Gaige perhaps experiences the most amount of character development, or rather lore enrichment, even if it isn't much more than the sisters. We learn that she is of Italian descent, with her last name being Di Martino. We also learned that her father was murdered by Holloway sometime after Borderlands 2, and that she's out for revenge. The book delves a little into the accidental murder of Marcy Holloway, the Countess's daughter, and the relationship between Gaige and Deathtrap. Vaughn is mentioned I think twice, once in the beginning and once at the end, and Reese pops in here and there with the excuse of not being available due to running the Atlas Corporation. Chapter 8. Ending Thoughts. Depending on who you talk to and how they perceive the Borderlands franchise post Tales from the Borderlands, you'll get wildly different responses. Some don't know that the spin-offs even exist, from the John Shirley novels back in 2011 before Borderlands 2 launched, all the way up to the current day with the Moxie's Mysterious Mementos comics. These spin-offs receive little if any advertising by Gearbox and the book publishers themselves, and Dead or Alive is no different. The ones who do know and are tapped into the franchise other than the games seem to not like the spin-offs to a fair degree. The John Shirley novels weren't well received, and the comics nowadays are hard to find and don't reveal much in the way of background lore of the Vault Hunters and side characters, and are considered non-canon. It also doesn't help that post-Tales, starting with BL3, it's been a predictable steady decline for the franchise in terms of writing, story, and fan satisfaction as they made the games. It's most likely that Dead or Alive is considered canon, and I consider the book quite good for what it sets out to do. We learn a lot more about the sisterly relationship between Sasha and Fiona, and they serve their big sister little sister dynamic well. We learned a little bit more about Felix and how he came across the girls, and what it made it worth to me was the spotlight on Gaige. Gaige is my favorite character to play as, to draw, and to follow throughout the Borderlands universe. I love everything about her design, her voice lines, her gameplay, and the book did her justice. We also get a little peek into Reese and his life as an Atlas CEO now and then. The book has heavy anti-capitalist themes, and the series as a whole has always represented that viewpoint historically. The series has always had a problem with pushing this theme while making most of the fan-favorite characters and storylines corporation-centered. That's less of a book problem and more of a series problem, but the entire book storyline is centered around the poor class versus the elite class, and feels a little heavy-handed at times. I thought the book was a fun read to pass the time, and even if it is later deemed non-canon or whatnot, learning about the characters I like is always interesting and awesome. The characterization of the characters isn't super duper consistent and can be a little annoying at times. The lack of returning Vault Hunters is also semi-disappointing, and the lack of information on both Vaughn and Reese hurt the story as well. Some things don't make sense, and sometimes I had a tough time following the action, but that might be more of an issue on my part than it is on the book. The book cover is lacking in originality, and the advertising was minimal. The TLDR is that the book is Borderlands humor, Borderlands story, and Borderlands writing polished to a fine degree, courtesy of Anthony Burch. If you like the writing from the franchise in general, you'll like the book. You'll especially like the book if you are a fan of Gaige and Fiona / Sasha in general. Not so much if you are a fan of Reese or Vaughn. I picked it up for $15 off of eBay, and I thought that was well worth the price, and I think any fan interested in the media spin-offs outside of the games should give it a chance. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, have an awesome day.